Hi guys, so last time we looked at the second generation group SHINee. They were really fun to get to know, and this time I thought I'd run a poll, see who you guys fancied, and we stuck with second gen and stuck with SM, and this time we're looking at girls' generation. Let's go. So, just one little thing to say before we get into the video. If you guys haven't already seen, I'm now doing a Patreon. I'm running a Patreon subscription service. If you guys want a bit more content, get to know me a little bit more, we do a few little things on there, the T-System explains it, feel free to check me out on there. It would help me an awful lot, and it means you guys get access to a bit more content you wouldn't necessarily on the channel. Okay, with that said, if you do enjoy that, that'd be amazing. Girls' Generation were the group that I went into knowing the absolute least about. Obviously, I knew who they were, I knew they were iconic as hell, and I knew one of their main vocalists packed a serious punch, and I can't wait to talk about her because she is insane. But the whole group are really good, and it was a nice experience getting to know them because I knew absolutely nothing about them going in, went in totally fresh, and yeah, I've got quite a few opinions on them. I think their order's kind of easy. It took me a while to kind of work out exactly where people place, but their voices all do a lot of different things and all make a lot of sense to me. So without further ado, Girls' Generation, SNSD, however you know them, let's have a look at their vocal ranking. Okay, so most people kind of agree that Yoona is last placed, but I've seen a lot of people say she can't sing. Mind you, I've seen a lot of people say that a lot of SNSD can't sing, which is absolutely untrue. Yoona's voice is decent, there's just a few things holding it back. Let me get into it.
Amazing grace, how sweet the
Okay, so let's start with the main positive. Yoona's voice is really light, it's really sweet, it's really angelic almost. It's got a lovely light, bright quality to it, and it's really nice and really youthful. The issue she has is her placement. Unfortunately, she does the classic thing where she places it naturally quite far back, which gives it, yes, kind of a place where it works okay and gives it kind of a richer tone, but also means it's kind of stuck. Now, when you sing far back, your voice has no room to go into. It's very hard to bring a mix down into this area, because if you're going, ah, you can't really bring any sort of head voice down into it. That place only works with one particular sound. Unfortunately, Yoona's voice kind of sticks in this place naturally. However, when she gets out of that coordination and brings it up a little bit, she unfortunately has the second main issue, which is nasality. Now, again, nasality, when used to lighten your tone, can get you into a really robust, really good mix, as you'll see later in this list. Unfortunately, for Yoona's voice, it kind of just lightens it a little bit, but also gets it stuck into a second place. So she doesn't really mix down into it very well. She can't project hugely well into it, and her voice kind of sounds stuck in both places. Yes, the tone's really light and really nice, and occasionally she can beef up a little bit with a slightly more robust sound, but generally her voice kind of gets either stuck quite far back, which means it can't mix down, and kind of has this hootier sound that is fine for some people, but doesn't really give you anywhere to go into. And then when she brings it up a little bit and lightens it, it goes more into nasality, but not nasality used to lighten and mix nasality that kind of gets you stuck in this kind of place without lifting your soft palate too much, and it doesn't really give you, again, any room to go into. So yeah, she has a light, nice voice. It's sweet, it's nice to listen to, it's very pleasant. Just technically it gets stuck and has a ceiling because she doesn't place it overly well, and that's fine. She's not in the main vocal line, she doesn't need to, and she's fine in that sub-vocalist role, and she can do those parts, but her voice doesn't really have anywhere to go into, or much versatility, or much in the way of colours, because it just gets either stuck far back or kind of stuck in her nose. And that's a shame, but she's not a bad singer at all. She just lacks the positional awareness to get the most out of her voice. Okay, so for me the next two places are kind of interchangeable. There's two areas in this list where they're kind of interchangeable. These two is one of those. So to me, Hyoyeon's voice wasn't used excellently by SM, but since she's done solo stuff and in her solo stages, she showcased what her voice can do. So what is that? Let's find out.
빠져버려서 다신 돌이킬 수 없겠지 날 떠난 채 나만 혼자 이 자리에 나는 네가 나를 존재하게 만든 신인 줄 알았어 그댄 어느새 내게 맞춘 움직임 내 나도 눈빛도 소외 그댄 쉽게 빠지길래 나를 막을 자신이 게 없던 일이 될까봐 멈춰본 적 없어 마치 원더 우먼처럼 난 언제나
Alright, so if you've only heard Hyoyeon sing as part of Girl Generation's music and songs, there's a chance you could think she can't sing all that well, and I would understand that, but her voice never really suited that high soprano singing style that SM really favours. When she's in her solo stages and when she did her own music and stuff, she brought her voice much lower down, in a much darker timbre, in a much easier tessitura for her, and her voice sounded infinitely better. Her voice is naturally a bit darker. It's not thick or full necessarily, but it's not super mega light and high like SM tends to make his singers singing. Her voice sounds much more comfortable when she's in a lower chest range, singing really light, really comfortable and really free. Now, her voice is nice, it's pleasant, it's a bit dark, a bit smoky as I've said, but as she brings it up, she kind of does one of two things. She either keeps a light sound, which sounds kind of okay, but doesn't really have much in the way of a chest grab or much chord closure to get into a really big belt sound. And when she does implement a really big belt sound, it kind of sounds a little bit unsustainable because she's kind of bringing up a little bit too much pressure to kind of alleviate for the fact that she isn't super comfortable in those areas. Her voice sounds so much better relaxed and kind of played back and a much smokier and darker. Yes, she sings it a little bit light still, like with a bit of breath and a little bit of air, but her voice sounds so much better in this lower place. Yes, it's not super varied and have many colours to it because she can't get super high with it. Her head voice works kind of just so, and she doesn't really have an amazing belt, because I said that brings up a little bit too much pressure to alleviate the kind of darker sound her voice has. But her voice is nice, it's pleasant, it hasn't got the placement issues that Yoona's does, it's not really super far back or super nasal, it has room it could go into, but just the instrument she has is a little bit darker, works much better in this lower kind of area, it just doesn't have much in the way of places to go, because she doesn't really mix super well or really implement the lighter style to get into a more balanced mix or anything like that, so her voice works pretty decently. It's got a nice lower range, sounds light, sounds smoky, sounds really good, it sounds much more comfortable when she's not singing up in these keys, but her voice doesn't really have a masses of places it can go into because it just technically just doesn't have that avenue. Alright, so as I said, Yuri and Hyoyeon are kind of interchangeable. They implement a similar technique in slightly different ways, but I'll get into that. So what do I mean? Let's look at Yuri sing.
속에 그대 모습 그리워하네 그대는 어디로 떠났나 너와는 같이 빠져가 깊이 너와는 같이
Okay, so Hyoyeon's voice has a little bit of chord closure and sounds a bit darker. Yuri's voice doesn't really have that. It's a very, very light voice. It hasn't got much in the way of projection, doesn't use a lot of chord closure, and doesn't have much in the way of power that she can implement. That I've noticed, that's her main weakness. She doesn't use chord closure or mix incredibly well to get into these bigger areas. However, having said that, because her tone is so light, she can navigate her whole range really easily and really smoothly. Yes, it doesn't have a huge sound or much power, but she can get into C5 areas and a little bit higher in a really light, easy way. Yes, it kind of sounds a little bit pitchy on occasion because that lighter style doesn't implement the chest grab, which gives you much easier tuning. It's much harder to tune when you're really light and really breathy, which is the way that Yuri generally sings. As I said, she can sing up in this C5 sort of area, or further down or a little bit higher with a really, really light coordination. It's a little bit nasal, stays in nose a little bit, and has a lack of chest grab and chest dominance, which means her mix isn't balanced, it's not robust, she hasn't got a great deal of power potential, and her head voice work is pretty decent, but because she's already in that head dominant light place, it doesn't really have much in the way to go into. She has a falsetto, of course, does. A lot of female singers can sing these high notes, as can Yuri, but her voice really excels when it's kind of light, flowing through all of her range, and can do all that really comfortably, really smoothly, and really well. Just as I say, the only real negative is power potential, because she doesn't use much of a chord closure or much of a grab. Her voice stays really light and has the odd pitching issue here and there, which means the colours of her voice aren't that varied. She can't go like super dark or super heavy or super powerful, but she has a really nice, light, consistent tone that works throughout all of the range. And yes, while it's not super powerful, it's pretty free, pretty flexible, and pretty nice. So yeah, I think she's the best of the non-singers, as it could be put. But her voice still isn't amazing, hasn't got a lot to it, but it's light, it's nice, and it's consistent. Okay, so to me, weirdly, this is one of the easiest places to actually place in the video. Sooyoung is easily the bridge gap between the vocal line and the people who aren't the strongest singers, because her voice is nice, it's rounded, and it's pretty solid. So let's have a look at it. The best thing I can use to describe Sooyoung's voice is it does a lot of things pretty well, but nothing like exceptionally. She's got a really balanced, well-rounded, decent instrument, and she fits a sub-vocalist role exceptionally. She's one of the better sub-vocalists I've heard. In a different group that wasn't SM and wasn't Girls' Generation, could easily be a lead vocalist. Okay, so she uses more of a chord closure than Yuri does. Her voice is a little bit bigger. It's still not super big. She still kind of uses a light coordination. It's not as airy and it's not as breathy, however. So that means when she's kind of in the middle of a voice or somewhat in the lower end of a voice, it sounds a little bit fuller, a little bit richer, and has a little bit more it can do with it. And it can use that chord closure to go up into more of a mix. Her mix is okay, it's pretty decent, it's a little bit inconsistent. Sometimes it sounds like she wants to really pull back really quickly and her voice doesn't want to be up that high. Sometimes it sounds like it's really resonant, really big, and really bombastic, and it has a really powerful, enormous timbre up in that area. So basically her voice, it's rounded, it's really good, it's got more of a chord closure than the singers I've mentioned beforehand, and she can do a lot more with her voice, so she doesn't use any of it like exceptionally. The technique isn't perfect, it's not pristine, because as I say, her mix, while she has one and she can lighten her tone, bring more weight up with the forward placement and get more of a kind of wide balanced blaring mix, it's a little bit inconsistent and she doesn't do it like super often, and she doesn't sound like she wants to do it all the time. Her voice sounds kind of better when it's a bit lighter, a little bit toned back, and kind of in the middle of her voice. So that means to me that she's got a good solid voice, good foundations, good basics down, the singing skill is definitely there, and she's just a little bit inconsistent with placement here and there because it isn't always placed in her head and brought forward the way it should be. Sometimes it kind of gets a little bit throaty and a little bit yelly sometimes. But that just means it's inconsistent. The fact that her voice can do that and has that avenue means she's pretty well rounded and pretty solid. So yeah, Sooyoung's voice, outside of the vocal line, it's definitely the best. It's got the most to it. And I was tempted to put her a place higher, but I felt like her voice didn't have anything it did stand out for me to actually place her there. So yeah, Sooyoung's voice, it's really good, really consistent, has a lot to it, just has a few technical inconsistencies, but don't we all? Okay, so to me, everyone else's place is final, but these two can kind of flip-flop depending on what you deem better and more technically skilled. To me, Tiffany's voice has the most it could work on still, but she's improved significantly, but I want to get onto that in a second. But let's watch her sing. I just want to preface all this by saying Tiffany has been the victim of a lot of unfair criticism over the years. A lot of people have made hand-picked videos of her bad moments singing, saying Tiffany can't sing, Tiffany can't sing. And everyone has those moments. It's not fair to just kind of pick on this one person, because yes, she covered the parts of Jessica, who I'll mention later on. I think that SM used to use her and used to really favour her as a lead vocalist, but he used her voice totally wrong. She was singing keys that were not comfortable for her voice at all, so she was yelling, she did have pitch issues and she did have problems, but she also had a really good voice underneath that she wasn't getting a chance to showcase. If I was just basing this alone off Girls' Generation's music and the way she sang back then, she would be lower, because she wasn't being used effectively. However, since she's gone solo, her voice now really shines. She's bringing it back. She's totally lowered the key and not singing this super high style that just didn't suit her voice. Yes, her voice has the ability to mix into a big belt. She's done it before. In Mr. Mister, that note is awesome. I don't know whether she has it all the time, but when she gets into that balance mix, it sounds fantastic, and she has that avenue to her voice. It's not where it works exceptionally well, but she does have it. Her voice works particularly well lighter and lower. Her voice is a little bit kind of huskier and darker than some of the other people, so when she brings it up into this lighter sound, a lot of time you can tell that she's going really throaty. She still sings kind of throaty now because she doesn't like to be in that super high key, but her voice is kind of flexible, it's light, it's nice, it's soft, and it sounds really good when she stays a little bit more connected, be it with a lighter coordination, a little bit of air sometimes. But now she's gone solo, she sings in this key, she's brought it a half step down, and her voice just resonates way more. It sounds way more balanced, it's way more comfortable, it's way more free, it's way more flexible, and it just sounds much easier. And when singing is easy, then you've got a good technical singer on your hands. And yes, when Tiffany wasn't singing parts that were easy, she struggled and she didn't sound amazing, but we've all had bad days. She sounds a lot better now. She sounds much more comfortable, much more healthy, and her voice, while she stays a bit more connected, a little bit lighter, with a bit of agility, going into a head voice, which is really beautiful, into a lower mix, which is really nice, and then kind of a lower area of voice. Her voice sounds amazing, and I think right now Tiffany is an excellent singer. Just in terms of Girls' Generation vocals, maybe she struggled a little bit more, but that's because her voice was not suited for that area, and it never was, and that should have been pretty obvious pretty quickly. But now I think she's doing really, really, really well. I just think she kind of lacks the power potential of, I guess, the people coming up. But she's still a really good singer, and people should kind of leave her alone. Okay, so yes, there is an argument that can be made for Tiffany at fourth. A lot of people put Tiffany at fourth, and I get that, but Sunny just impressed me way, way, way more, and she's kind of totally the opposite of Tiffany. What do I mean? Let's have a look. Alright, so as I said, Sunny and Tiffany's voice work in the two absolute opposite ends of the spectrum. Tiffany's voice worked better, connected, down low, much easier, lower key, fantastic. Sunny's voice is really high, really bright, and really youthful. She sings exactly the same way she speaks. It's almost childlike, but her technique is really fascinating to me. Her main negative is she doesn't use a lot of chord closure. Her voice, when it goes lower, has next to no ability. It kind of starts whispering down at like a B flat 3 and has absolutely no low range whatsoever, unlike Tiffany, who does. However, the lack of chest grab that she has doesn't impact her higher mix at all, which is kind of interesting because her upper mix is so easy, so consistent, and so balanced. Yes, it's kind of a bit whiny as she brings it really high up, but she's singing like A4, B4, C5s like it's her speaking voice, like it's just easy. She has this light sound she always brings up, which means she's got a really balanced head dominant mix, which sounds fantastic. It sounds super easy. She brings it forward as well and opens her mouth really wide for these bright, blaring notes. When she was in a musical, her voice suited musical theatre beautifully because of how bright and how youthful her tonal quality was. Yes, when it goes a little bit higher, it can sound a little bit whiny, but that's kind of a tonal issue rather than a technical issue, because she's still getting to the D5 and E5 belts like they're easy. If you're singing up there and it's easy, you've got a balanced, very good head dominant mix on your hands. Yes, her negative of not having much chest dominance or much chord closure can impact most of her range. If that means she's low for you, then I absolutely understand that. But to me, technically being able to sing in a head dominant mix and having that area of your voice incredibly easy is a bit more technically impressive than having this level of voice easy, because anyone can kind of sing in a chest voice if you've got the key down and you've got that kind of comfortable. If you're singing constantly in a head dominant mix like Sunny always did, and belting in such a consistent, reliable way without sounding like you're bringing up too much weight or too much pressure, you've got an insanely good, consistent technique, and I think Sunny's voice is amazing. Not to mention her head voice work is fantastic, because obviously her voice is naturally lighter and brighter, and using a head dominant coordination anyway, she can go into this really light, really gorgeous falsetto and head voice area. It sounds by far the most consistent probably in the whole of Girls' Generation. Sounds amazing, it sounds really nice, sounds really unique and really robust and really good, and has just an area it works very well in with a lot of freedom and ease. So yeah, Sunny's voice is probably my favourite of the whole group when I was researching them. I just loved her tone and loved her sound. Technically she's not as rounded and balanced as a 3 coming up. She has only one area of voice it works really well in and lacks the chest grab of a lower range, but her voice is fascinating, and to sing in that area in a mixed way is really difficult technically to do all the time, and she does it fantastically. Okay, so outside of the top 2, to me, Seohyun's voice is by far the most well-rounded, by far the most balanced, and has the most colours and avenues it has access to. Let's listen to her sing.
오늘 네가 내게 어떤 말을 할지도 너무 알겠어. 이제야 완벽해졌어. 네 곁에 있는 이 순간 모든 게 달라져. 왜 더 사랑하는 사람이 왜 더 아파요. 맘이 더는 식지 않게 난 여기저기 뛰노는 너의 맘. Your dinner, your dessert, and so much more. Anything you want, just let me cater to you. 너도 추억에 기대어 눈부신 그날의 꿈을 꾸는지.
Okay, so what makes her voice so good? Firstly, she stays pretty connected. Yes, she can sing in a kind of lighter, lower place like everybody else so far does, but that's like a choice. She can add a little bit more air into her sound, bring it a lot lighter, and make it really nice and really consistent and really low and really easy. But she can also stay very connected, and as she goes up into like the middle of her voice still sounds resonant, big and full, which means that as she goes up, she has access to more of a power potential, and pretty much everyone I mentioned so far outside of probably Sunny. She has an upper mix that she uses. It doesn't always sound the best. It can go a little bit nasal, and when she goes into that upper mix, it sounds a little bit uncomfortable, like she doesn't really want to be there. It sounds a lot better when she's using a chest dominant mix, a little bit lower in her range. Again, her note in Mr. Mister is not high as the big note that Tiffany does, but it still sounds huge and big and full, because her voice is really big. It's connected. It's got a really nice, strong sound to it, and she can bring it forward. Her placement has no issues whatsoever. Her placement's really forward, really open, and really easy. It doesn't go far back and sound hooty. It doesn't go really nasal except in her upper mix and sound stuck. It just sounds big, full, and easy. At the same time, her voice has amazing musicality and amazing tuning. She has fantastic harmonization skills. Pretty much every comment of every video I saw said Seohyun is the queen of harmonization, and yeah, too right she is. Her voice can kind of link to everyone else's voice when they're singing, match it perfectly for either pitch or in a different area to harmonise really well, and her ear is fantastic. She can use her voice so technically well. It's got more avenues than Tiffany, because Tiffany struggles and pulls throaty chest pressure up as she goes up. Seohyun doesn't do that, it just sounds big and open and full. Sunny kind of has no chest voice and no kind of lower range. Seohyun does. It's just not got the mega power potential and the mega mix potential of the top two. But to me, of everyone I mentioned so far, Seohyun's voice has the most to it, the most colours, and is the most consistent and easy in multiple areas of her range, and her harmonisation skills are really strong. So yeah, to summarise, really strong chord closure, really good sound, can lighten it if she wants to, a lot of colours to access to, harmonised very, very, very well, and has a nice robust chest dominant mix. Only negative, kind of whiny and nasal as she goes into a really high mix because her voice doesn't want to be that high and that big, but when she stays bigger in a lower place or a middle place, it sounds fantastic. Really good, balanced voice. Okay, so sorry in the intro for not saying Jessica will be in the video. She will be, that's why I put a little bit of text there, because I just kind of forgot to mention it. Jessica's voice was really interesting, and I would have been absolutely curious to see how it progressed as she went on. And to me, she still, of all the voices, probably has the best, outside number one, obviously. But we'll get into that. What makes her voice the way it is? Some people might argue that Seohyun should be second because she's shown a lot more improvement than Jessica, and maybe, yeah, there's an argument that could be made for that, but in terms of at their peak, Jessica's vocals were more impressive to me. Her voice was used in such a strange, interesting way. She had a light, angelic, natural tone. Her voice was really soft, and it didn't sound like it had too much to it. It kind of had a little bit of nasal placement, it sounded comfortable, it emoted very, very, very well. Emotional ballad songs sounded amazing in Jessica's voice. But her voice was, yeah, it had natural kind of more nasal placement. But sometimes you can get stuck with nasality, as I've mentioned before with Yoona. However, Jessica did not have that problem. She used it to lighten her tone, and it got up into a really, really balanced, beautiful mix. Yes, her lower range and her middle of her voice was nice, it was good, it had a good tonal quality, but the nasality sometimes made it sound a little bit strange and get stuck occasionally a little bit. But when she used the nasality to lighten into that upper mix, her voice sounded enormous. She has the second best belt in the group, and it had amazing vibrato. The vibrato got on really quickly, which means technically it's there. She's got the style inbuilt into her voice very well. Her mix is big. The belts she always used to do were really powerful, really strong, which is really weird from somebody with like a lighter nasal coordination. That doesn't really mesh up too well. If you've got a lighter nasal coordination, as you bring your mix up, it should sound kind of whiny and shrill, but it never did. Jessica's voice always sounded big and robust and forward and full, but still had that slight nasality, which meant her voice was lighter and had that ability to be flexible in that area. So yeah, Jessica's voice is a bit of a marvel to me. I think it's really good and really impressive, and the mix that she implements means that technically her instrument was very, very, very balanced. And when she was lower down, yes, it wasn't the strongest part of her range. Seohyun might have a better lower range than Jessica does, but Jessica still sounded really balanced all the way through her range, and she had no technical inconsistencies or issues. She just had really great power potential, using that kind of softer nasal placement to lighten her tone and get that mix more balanced rather than bring up too much weight or too much pressure. So yeah, Jessica's voice, it's really interesting, works all the way through. I'm curious to see how it would have grown, or whether that nasality would have become an issue later in life, or whether she would have used it to get into an even more big balanced place. I don't know. But yeah, her voice was really, really well used, really angelic, really nice, amazing tonal quality, very, very, very unique with the way that she used the kind of nasality, and then with an amazing upper mix and a really balanced instrument. So yeah, Jessica's voice was fantastic, and it's a shame we didn't really get to see her grow too much. Hyoyeon, she's a bit good, isn't she? I was kind of warned that Girl Generation had this really great main vocalist. She's one of the best main vocalists in K-pop ever. I was like, okay, yeah, she's quite good, yeah. Taeyeon's voice is amazing, and I love to talk about it. She's an insane singer, and there was no one else that could possibly have been number one. Let's delve into her voice.
Got your sleeper to dinner. 나도 난 아무 말도 못하고 다 괜찮아.
Big and balanced. Taeyeon's voice can be described in those two words incredibly well. First, let's get the boring bit out of her way. Her lower range was okay. She had a soprano low range. It wasn't like the best part of her voice, but there was no issues with it. It wasn't far back. It didn't get stuck. It had a little bit of nasality, which meant it was quite light all the way through and quite easy. And when you have a natural nasal placement, as long as you use it to not get stuck, as I've mentioned before, you can go up and down the middle of your voice nice and comfortably, nice and easy. Everything sounds easy, balanced, and amazing. Taeyeon's voice gets quite good as she goes really big, and her belt is one of the best female idol belts I've heard so far. It's very balanced, yes. It's also incredibly chest dominant, kind of. It has the sound and the phonetics to suggest that it's got a lot of pressure and a lot of weight because the sound is enormous, but it's so sustainable, and as she brings her voice up into that area, she uses a little bit of nasality to lighten it, gets it to a lovely balanced mix, just like Jessica does, but it's bigger, it's more bombastic, it's more powerful, it's got a little bit more to it. On top of the main powerful chest dominant mix that she's mainly known for, like her voice is so big and she brings it forward, she kind of keeps the placement in her head, but brings quite a bit of weight up along that nasality to unleash these really big blaring high notes. Above that, she's also got another little level that she didn't use as much, but she's got that really high head dominant mix just above it, which kind of mimics the male mask place head voice in that sort of F5 sort of area. She only scooped up to it now and again. I haven't heard of it too much, but her voice had that avenue which no one else has seemed to, which is a really good sign that your soprano voice is kind of really balanced and really good all the way through. But yeah, Taeyeon's voice is mainly known for that big upper belt, and it's not all her voice has. It emotes incredibly well when she's on stage and she cries, or you can feel it. Every part of her voice is just giving you the emotion and you truly feel it. That's an artist. Yes, she's a good vocalist and a good singer, but she can emote so incredibly well with her vocals, which is an overlooked thing sometimes, even by myself. I don't always take into account emotional vocals, but she has them. She has soft, balanced, light vocals. Yes, she can sing kind of ballad songs really well. Yes, energetic songs to a point. Yes, but her balanced mix and her upper chest mix and her just mixed voice generally is just so far above most female idols I've heard so far, because yes, it's got that area up there which she uses sometimes, but that big, powerful kind of D5, C5, chest dominant, balanced, powerful mix makes her one of the strongest female idol vocalists I've heard so far. And listening to her voice, literally, I was listening to them all and I was thinking, yeah, she's good, she could be here, she could be here. Taeyeon is number one. Taeyeon is just number one. She just is. Her voice is so balanced, so powerful, and absolutely incredible, and I'm so happy that I found it. Okay, thank you so much for watching, guys. Girl Generation were really, really fun to know, and Second Gen's been really fun to delve into a little bit, and it won't be the last time we get here, I'm very sure of that, because I know you guys want some more Second Gen groups, but next time you voted for a really modern new group, NCT Dream. Now I know they've just had a new comeback, so I'm waiting for a few clips to come out to make sure I've got enough to judge them on, but NCT Dream will be next. Hope you guys are looking forward to that video, and for now, goodbye, thank you so much for watching.